Hey guys, in this video, we're going to take a look at installing Pi-hole in Open Media Vault 5 using Docker and Portainer. Now, this is a video that has been requested several times in my comment section, and I'm going to be honest, it was a little tedious to figure it out. Pi-hole has got some good information on hub.docker.com, but there's just some stuff that made it a little bit more complicated than I think it needs to be given the circumstances, but that could just be my lack of understanding of why they did certain things. So this does involve a little bit more than the other videos that I've done up to this point. So let's go ahead and switch over to my desktop and take a look at what we're going to have to do to get Pi-hole installed on Open Media Vault 5. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do before we really do anything else is actually come into Open Media Vault, go into the general settings here and change port 80. We're going to need port 80 available for Pi-hole. It's the only way we can get Pi-hole to work. When we set our DNS on our individual devices or our router to point to the IP address of our Pi-hole. We can't specify a port, so port 80 has to be the default. So what we're going to do is change our Open Media Vault from port 80 to port 81. We'll click Save, give this a second, and then we'll click Apply, and we'll click Yes. And then we should get an error message here in a moment. Just kind of a general error saying that it can't communicate or something to that effect. And that's because we changed the port and it shouldn't be able to connect. Okay, so there's that error that I was talking about. If we go ahead and click OK, if I refresh this, it should just fail out. Yep, so now we're just going to add port 81 to that. And now we can get back in. So that way we know we're good to go. Open Media Vault's on the right port. So now we can go and actually move on to installing Pi-hole. Okay guys, so obviously here is the Pi-hole website where you can learn more about Pi-hole if you're interested in that. I'll have a link in the description if you want to go check that out. And there is this little thing right here that says Docker install, and that's great, except that, well, it doesn't do anything to really help us out. I mean, sort of right here, I guess. In fact, this is the code or the Docker Compose example that we'll use, sort of, except that I've modified it, and I will have a link to my modified version in the description down below as well, because some of this stuff applies, but some of it doesn't. But just know that this is basically what we're going to use when we go over to Portainer and install or do the stack that we're going to do. Now, in order for this to work, okay, so these are the same things on two different websites. So I'm going to go ahead and close the GitHub page. We're just going to focus here on hub.docker.com, and I'll have this linked in the description as well. So there'll be lots of links in the description. Go check out the description. So up to this point, any of these that we've done in the past have been version 2, and this one is version 3. Now, with the way Docker and Portainer are set up in Open Media Vault 5, it won't accept version or anything higher than version 2 without changing kind of the back end of Portainer and Docker. And what we've got to do in order to make that happen is actually switch over to swarm mode for our system. Okay guys, here is the Docker Swarm documentation, and basically all we're going to do is use this little bit of code in an SSH command prompt. So we'll have to do that in order to switch to swarm mode in order to make sure that we can use this version 3 Docker Compose file here. So let's go ahead and open up PuTTY and go ahead and get swarm mode enabled. Okay, so we're going to type in our server's IP address, 1.238, I believe. Let me make sure. Yep, that is correct. So we're going to go ahead and log into that. Hey, it opened up in the right spot. Oops, but I want to be over here. So we're going to log in as root, just like always. And what we're going to do is Docker swarm init or initialize, and we'll just press enter. It's going to do its thing. Now, what's cool about Docker Swarm is that if you take this bit of code right here and you've got another server set up, you can actually make these two talk to each other, or this and the other one talk to each other and distribute their workloads between them. And that's what Swarm is cool about. We're not going to do that here, but we have to have it in this mode in order to get this version 3 up here to work. Now that we've done that, now that we've initialized Swarm, what we have to do is reboot. So we'll just type in reboot. And we're going to give that a minute to do its thing. And while it's doing that, I'm going to come over here to Portainer. I'm going to show you this. So this is our normal Portainer. This is what we're used to seeing here. You'll notice that right above settings, it says host. So keep in mind host and settings here. Because in a minute, once the server finishes rebooting and I refresh this page, there's going to be some change. There will be some changes here that you'll have to take note of. Okay, so my server is rebooted. I can see it in a different screen, so I'm going to go ahead and refresh. Now it wants me to log back in. And we'll click here. So now we've got secrets and Swarm here. And this tells us that Swarm has been enabled. Okay, so the next thing we need to do here is go over to our configuration, our shared configuration folder, and change the permissions of it in PuTTY. So what we'll do, of course, is we'll log back in to our server via PuTTY. Oops, let's bring this up here. And we'll log in as root. And then we're going to go back a directory. Oops, we're going to go cd ... and we'll do a list screen. And so what we're looking for right here is this shared folders. So we're going to do a cd, and we're going to change directory into shared folders, and we'll do another list so we can see that the configuration there. Now, what we're going to do is I've got a command here. We're going to change the permissions to be rewrite and execute on this configuration folder here. So I'll go ahead and click enter. So now those permissions are fully open. We can basically do whatever we want to do at this point. Now you can see I've already got a Heimdall in here, and that's fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to right click. I'm going to do new, create a new folder. I'm going to call it Pi-hole. Oops. And then I'm going to open that. And I'm going to create two folders inside of here. I'm going to create etc/-Pi-hole. Oops. And I'm also going to create etc oops, dash DNSMASQ.D. Those are the two folders that we need in there. So without these, you have to manually create these folders. If you don't, Pi-hole or the stack that we're going to create will not create them automatically. This is one of the other differences. Normally when we create these stacks, the server creates these folders automatically. It doesn't do that when we switch to Swarm mode for some reason. So now that we have that, we're just going to minimize that for a minute. We're going to minimize that. So next, what we'll do is we'll go to stacks. We're going to click on add stack. We're going to name this Pi-hole. And then I've got this set up right here. So here you can see we've got version 3. We've got our services. It's going to be Pi-hole. The image it's going to pull is the latest. Below that, we've got a series of ports set up here. Basically, each one of these ports performs a specific function. Now, port 80 is the port that we're going to access everything on. And that's why we had to switch our Open Media Vault port from 80 to, in this case, 81. So that's why we had to switch that port, was so that we could access this on port 80 for when we set up DNS, either on our router or our individual devices. We have to have this on port 80. Now below that, we've got our environment with time zone. Again, I'm in Denver, so you'll want to switch this time zone to wherever you are. The web password, this is what you'll need in order to be able to log in. So make sure that you just change the password portion of this, leave the quotes around it. Those need to be there. You can also delete these comments after here. There's just there for when you go to download the file from Google Docs, or from Google Drive rather. Now the server IP, this is going to be unique to everybody. Mine is, I've got in here is 192.168.1.238 because that's the server address I'm working with right now. You'll want to change it to the IP address of your server. Below that, we've got our volumes. So basically this is the absolute path to the folders that we just created in our configuration. So remember we created the config folder /Pi-hole /etc/-Pi-hole and etc/-DNSMASQ.D. Make sure that you've got these absolute paths specific to your setup. Again, you can delete these comments if you want to here, which I'll just go ahead and do. I guess I'll go ahead and delete these while I'm at it, like so. So below that, we've got actually network mode host. take that out. I will remove that from the actual file. The network mode host will not work. So that's fine. The DNS needs to be set up like this. You need to have your local IP address or your home IP address first. This 127.0.0.1 is home as far as the server is concerned. And then 1.1.1, you could switch this with 8.8.8. I like 1.1.1. That's for Cloudflare's DNS service. If you want to learn more about this, there are some. There's a link here, but this is for NetAdmin. You need this if you're going to run DHCP from your Raspberry or from your server here with Pi-hole, and then restart unless stopped. That's pretty standard. So now that we have all of this in here, now we can click on Deploy the Stack. So we've got that. What we can do now is come over to Containers. Oops. Sorry, we'll go to Stacks, we'll go to Pi-hole. Then we can drop this down. You can see that it is preparing, it's working on what it's doing. So we'll just hang out and wait for a couple of minutes. This may or may not automatically refresh, so periodically you may just want to hit F5 on your keyboard to make sure that it's doing what we want it to do. It is still preparing, so we'll just kind of hang out. Now it's starting, so that's good. It is progressing into that process. Here we can see that it's going through its process here of setting everything up. So once this finishes up, which it looks like it's doing a pretty good job so far, so then what we can do is come over to here. I'm just going to delete that port. Oops. So that's running. So now we need to go to our IP address /admin. This is working now. So what we can do is click login and type in password, or of course, whatever you changed your password to in that Docker schema. So now this is working. So what we want to do is actually change, we're going to change our network settings here for this particular computer. Go to change adapter options, drag this up, and we're going to drag this up. Everything always opens in the wrong window. So we'll go to properties, we're going to go to Internet Protocol version 4. We're just going to type in the IP address 1.238, and we'll click OK, and we'll click OK, and we'll click close, and we'll close, and we'll close. So now you can see this jumping up. Now, the one thing to keep in mind here, and this, when I was testing this out last night, I noticed that these two graphs didn't work. Give it time, they will. For some reason, there's a delay to get these graphs to work. But what I want to do here is actually pop this open, or pop this over. I'm going to just close some stuff here. I'm going to open a new tab, or a new window. I'm going to push that over to there, and then we'll go to Social Blade. And we should be able to watch this spike up pretty quickly because Social Blade is awful about having lots and lots and lots of ads on their site. But here we can see there are no ads showing up. There's a spot for an ad here, and there's a spot for an ad here. There's a spot for an ad down here as well. Normally they've got ads down the sides. They've got one on the left and the right side over here. There's also one that pops up across the bottom. So here we can see that that's working. So, oops. So let's not do that. Let's do that one. So you can see that this is still climbing here. So let's go ahead and take a look at future projections. That should, again, went from 70 to basically 90 just by that one click there. So here you can see that it's doing a really good job of blocking everything. Now, again, these two charts are not working yet. We're going to give it some time. In fact, they may even be working by the time we get through with this video. But there's one other thing I wanted to talk about regarding Pi-hole and its reporting. So if we come down, here we can see, as far as permitted domains are concerned, right here it's gonna show you this IP address, and this is an IP address that it has set up for itself, despite the fact that that is not my IP address for this computer. So let me do this. I'll type in, ipconfig /all. So here you can see my IP address for this device is 192.168.1.242. And below that, I've got a default gateway. This is my router. This is a I don't even remember what kind of a router it is, but a Netgear or something. It's the one that's giving me the 242 address. The 238 for this Pi-hole or for the server itself, is coming from that same router. Now, Pi-hole, when it was set up in Docker and Portainer, created its own virtual address. And basically, it acts as though it's its own router. So that's why we're only seeing this. Now, the problem is that with this setup, you're not going to be able to see individual devices that are pointed to Pi-hole. You're only going to see this one IP address, and yours might not be 10.0.0.2. It may be something else, but that's what mine has set up. It's kind of a virtual network that it's set up. And all of the interactions are going to happen on that IP address, so you can't break down per client what's happening. And that's like the one downfall that I've found to this process for a lot of users. Now, for me, it doesn't matter, because on my current setup, I haven't implemented this on my server yet. I haven't deployed it across my network yet. I'm just using a Raspberry Pi, and I've got my router pointed to my Raspberry Pi, and that's how all of my DNS is being blocked. So this doesn't really affect me, because that's how I've already got it set up. But for somebody who wants to point individual devices to it, you can do that, but you're not going to see individual device statistics. You're only going to see kind of the grand scheme of things with regard to your DNS blocking. Okay, guys, so here we are about 20 minutes later from the time I stopped all of the other recording, and here you can see that these charts are working. They just popped in on their own. It actually picked up all of the data from when it wasn't showing anything. It just took some time to generate these graphs. So they will work. It will just take 15 to 20 minutes for them to actually populate. So there's that. Here you can see that we're still getting now we're actually getting blocked domains and permitted domains. We didn't get all that data earlier. Same thing down here. We're getting top clients. We didn't see that earlier. But again, it's got that virtual network address in there. So basically everything is working now. Okay, guys, so that's pretty much it. There's a couple other things I want to touch on just real quick. Setting up additional instances or programs or applications, whatever you want to call them, setting those up on your Docker and Portainer now will be a little bit different. If you want to use stacks, you'll have to change version 2 to version 3 in that very top line up there where it says, version 2. You have to switch that to version 3. For some reason, version 2 won't work in Swarm, and version 3 won't work without Swarm. So it's a little bit of backwards compatibility issues. I'm not sure why they haven't fixed that yet, but it is something that you should be aware of. And also going back, when I was setting up Pi-hole and I had to create the individual folders, you may have to continue to do that for any of the stacks that you set up. I haven't honestly tried it with just setting up a normal container, but I've only done it with stacks. Stacks will work even if you already got stacks set up and you switch from standard or standalone mode to Swarm mode. Everything should still work. Just know that you'll want to double check that, and you'll want to maybe do some testing on kind of a dummy server like I've done here to make sure that nothing goes awry when you're doing this. I haven't done a lot of extensive testing, so just know that you're kind of doing this at your own risk, and hopefully everything continues to work. I installed Heimdall when I was in standalone mode, and then I switched to Swarm mode and got Pi-hole installed, and Heimdall kept working as expected. So that's kind of the extent of the testing that I've done so far. So just know that that's something you may have to look into if you've already got a server set up and you switch it to Swarm mode. So lots and lots to cover in this video, and hopefully we made it through everything without any issues. I think that pretty much covers everything that we needed to cover. Again, be sure to check the description down below. If somebody has anything that they want to add, or they've got other information, I probably will add additional information to the description down below. So be sure to check that if you've got questions, because I will most likely add any updates or additions or changes or anything like that to the description down below. So be sure to check there before you start spamming with questions and that sort of thing, because if somebody's already asked the question, it will be answered in the comments, or in the not only the comments, but hopefully in the description as well. So I think that pretty much sums up everything I wanted to say. It would mean a lot to me if you guys would do me a favor and hit the thumbs up button, the like button, as well as getting subscribed. This video was pretty tedious to research and get figured out and make, and it would really help me out if you guys would reciprocate a little bit and help me out. So I think with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. As always, thanks for your time. I always appreciate your support, and I'll talk to you in the next video.